It's coming up. All right, and we are live for our warm-up of the session with Roman. Roman, welcome.
Thank you, Vasco. Nice to be here.
It's great to have you here. I mean, you were also part of our summit last year, and thank you for being back and sharing such an important topic. What have you been up to lately?
What have I been up to? Work-wise? Work-wise, I've continued to focus really on the two topics I've worked on for a while, product strategy and product leadership. And so one of the things I've spent some time on towards the end of last year and the beginning of this year is to work on product portfolio management or aspects of product portfolio management, particularly around portfolio strategy. And then I've come up with a little framework or model, which I've called the strategy stack, to help people understand where the portfolio strategy sits, how it relates to the product strategy, and how you can position the product strategy and how everything kind of hangs together with a business strategy and how technology strategy might fit in there. Because I find that sometimes people are confused with all those different strategies. How many do we need? How do they relate to each other? So yeah, so that's been that's been sort of really a focus for me this year so far, I'd say.
Well, that sounds very interesting. I have seen the same kind of confusion regarding product strategy, company strategy, and then of course there's all kinds of flavors like mission and vision and so on. So I can I can relate to the confusion. For all of those who are already listening to us here on the Product Owner Summit, remember that you can ask your questions on the chat window here on YouTube. So do send in your questions so that we can answer those as we go. We'll start in a minute. We're just warming up, making sure that people are streaming in before we get started. We'll be talking about Agile product discovery, discover to deliver, or deliver to discover. And that will be a very interesting topic also because there's a little bit of controversy attached to it that is important to discuss and learn more. And Roman, you've written several books. Are you working on a new book now?
Well, my intention was to update one of the existing books, and that's been a little bit delayed, partly because of the client work that I've taken on. So I'm working with a few really interesting clients, but yeah, that's kind of taken up the time I had allocated for some book writing work. And so what it means is that I've got more ideas relating to books and book updates than I can currently address. So I don't know. That's the honest question. We'll see.
Well,
We'll see.
it will come. It will come when it comes, right? It's ready when it's ready.
That's right, when the time's right. So, I mean, the short answer is I've just been a little bit busy lately, so I just need to carve out some time and make some space to do some book writing again. But yeah, I mean, as I continue to write blog articles on a monthly basis and also offer an audio version of my podcast, and I've continued to offer new YouTube videos on a monthly basis, that also has kept me quite busy in terms of just generally my content production schedule. And then on top of, together with the client work and public workshops, then just the book writing, as I said, it's just been kind of delayed. There's only so much I can do.
I can totally see that because, of course, there's there's quite a lot of work in the content production itself, and that's not even the consulting and the book writing that you do. But I'm happy to hear that you're producing content on a regular cadence. How are you able to keep that up? Has it been difficult?
Sometimes it can be difficult, yeah, but usually I find that the writing helps me clarify some thoughts. It helps me consolidate knowledge. It also helps me address, in some cases, issues, challenges I encounter in my client work and my public workshops. Like for instance, the strategy stack, that really came out of my client work, just bumping into, the issue of, clients being confused about different types of strategy and how they relate on a continued basis. So I thought like, right, I'd like to address this and, what help can I offer? So similarly with the product portfolio strategy piece, working with clients, helping them understand how they can articulate, how they can shape such a strategy, then naturally led to writing an article about it. So in that sense, those two things I find work quite well together. But yeah, sometimes it can be hard to have the focus and make the time to create new content. Yeah. But,
Absolutely. Now I know how that goes. I mean, I do run a daily podcast, so I know how hard it is to keep the
yeah.
schedule and then put all the or coordinate that with all of the other work that needs to happen as well. Very good. But I'm happy to hear that you're already thinking of ideas for either improving an existing book or maybe even starting a new one. Who knows, right?
Who knows? Yeah.
And the strategy stack. I guess you have some blog posts about that already.
That's right. Yeah, I think that went live in what month are we in? Last month. Last month, yes, in March.
Okay, very good. So we'll
March
link to
24th.
those in the link below the video. So make sure you check that out. It's not there yet, but it will be soon, as soon as we have the chance to do the post production and update the video description. But I guess we'll get started. So Roman, welcome once more, and everybody watching, welcome to the Product Owner Summit. I'm your host Vasco Duarte, and we have with us Roman Pichler, a renowned speaker, author, and of course also consultant in the agile and in the product space. How many books have you written so far now, Roman?
I think four, if I count correctly. So yes.
I was at three, but I guess I was wrong. So four books, and of course you can check that out at I think it's romanpichler.com, right?
That's right. Yeah.
All right, so make sure you check that out. And by the way, as we get started and going deeper into this conversation, do send your questions here on YouTube, and why not like and share the video. Make sure that people like you also find it. There will be other sessions on the summit also about product discovery. It's a hot topic, it seems. David Bland, who is the author of Testing Business Ideas, will have both the keynote in the last day, so tomorrow, as well as a live Q&A. So be sure to check that out at productownersummit.org. But I think, Roman, to kick things off, to kick the discussion off, could you elaborate a bit when you think about agile product management, so product management within an agile context, that's what we are talking about. What sparked your interest? What triggered you to start talking and investigating and writing more about agile product discovery?
Yeah. So, product discovery in product management's been a topic, you could say that's attracted quite a bit of interest over the past so many years, 5 years plus. And I think Marty Kagan, has done a lot of work in that space, certainly made that a topic very visible. And then Teresa Torres wrote a book, as probably many of you know, called Continuous Product Discovery or Continuous Product Discovery Habits, something along those lines. Anyway, it's a I think a seminal book, you could say, on product discovery. And Teresa's developed a specific tool, the Opportunity Solution Tree. And so listening to talks others have given on that topic, also having the opportunity to connect with Teresa and obviously reading her book and articles, there's been that's kind of sparked my interest, and it's made me wonder, why isn't product discovery talked about so much in the agile space? Or are there any product discovery techniques that are being used by agile teams, by product development teams that use agile practices? So yeah, that's sort of where my interest comes from.
What do you think brings that, not triggers, but what influences the fact that product discovery hasn't been so much talked about in the agile space?
Well, I think to a certain extent in my mind, because if you practice an agile framework, if you apply an agile framework like Scrum, properly, then product discovery, I would argue, is kind of built into the framework. So the way I've always understood Scrum to work is that we start with a very loose, sketchy product backlog, a very preliminary product backlog that captures a few ideas. We build something within a few weeks, up to 4 weeks max. So run a sprint, build something, put it in front of the right people, maybe selected users and customers, certainly some stakeholders, in terms of business stakeholders, listen to their feedback and then decide what to do next and how to continue, if we should continue and how to continue. And what that then means is that the product backlog gets updated, that it gets refined, new items are added, new features are added. So it's this, you deliver to discover, you could say. We build something and that allows us to generate some learning, some valuable insights. Unfortunately, that's not necessarily how Scrum is often applied. I think it's more commonly applied, where you assume you already know the functionality and the features that need to be built, and these are then given to a team, and then it's more a delivery framework rather than development framework, in the sense that development means discovery and delivery. And so, I think from that perspective, and given that many development teams still are delivery teams, that many product people, no matter if their title is product manager or if they refer to themselves as product owner, are still very delivery focused for various reasons. I think it's good to talk about product discovery and kind of, highlight the need to strengthen product discovery practices, certainly for product people.
And I really like that caveat that you put in, right? Like, although product discovery should be, and it is kind of the idea that it should be part of how we do Scrum, sometimes Scrum, as an example, I'm sure Kanban the same, gets used more like a delivery framework rather than a product development, and therefore also including discovery framework. Why do you think that is?
And I think to a certain extent, a misunderstanding of how development works, and particularly how modern product development works, or agile product development works. And I think it's also, old habits that die hard. I think it's still sometimes the case that development teams see themselves as, we're a bunch of programmers, we're a bunch of, technically minded people. That's what we do. But hey, helping discover, helping identify product functionality and features and refine the descriptions of those items. No, that's not for us. Product owner, you do this work. And then the product owner is seen as a product backlog manager, as a user story writer. But that was never the idea of the product owner role, certainly not in Scrum. So yeah, and then when you look at the product management space and you look at the product manager role, but the same is true for the product owner. Product people aren't always sufficiently empowered. Some product people are simply given a list of features to implement by their boss or the stakeholders. Now, I think that's wrong. So I think product managers, product owners really have to have the right to determine what features and what kind of user experience the product should offer. And I like Marty Kagan's definition of what product discovery is. And I think he said something like, or he wrote something like, it's figuring out a solution to a problem we've been asked to solve. So the idea being that stakeholders or management put forward a problem, Teresa would say an outcome, a business outcome, a business goal that should needs to be addressed, needs to be solved. And then the product team, the product manager, product owner, together with development team representatives and maybe some key stakeholders, with the help of some key stakeholders, figure out how to address this problem and discover the right features, to discover the right user experience together. So yeah, that's pretty much my take.
And when we talk about this, discovering a solution for a problem we've been asked to solve, I think that, if I look fundamentally of how software industry has developed over time, we've always started from a solution that is predefined up front, and then the development teams just code, right? There's a famous song here in Finland, it's in Finnish, but the translation is, here's the spec, why aren't you coding? Right? And that kind of summarizes a lot of the expectations regarding IT specifically, but product development in general. Some genius like Steve Jobs comes up with the brilliant idea, and everybody else is just the hands to this one genius that is there. Now, that's not how product development actually works, because of course there's a lot of things we need to discover. I usually refer to it more, product development, I mean, I refer to it more as a search problem rather than a delivery problem. Is that something that you think reflects also a little bit of your thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I totally agree with that. Certainly, as long as there's a certain amount of uncertainty and change and innovation present. So, I mean, there's, how should I put this? I mean, whenever you do something new, whenever you do something innovative, be it that you develop a brand new product, be it that you make a bigger change to an existing product, and that could be taking it to a new market segment, it could be renewing the technology stack, it could be radically changing the user experience that the product offers. Including the user interaction, there is so much uncertainty. There is, so much innovation present that just simply writing down a specification, handing it to a development team, and assuming that people will be able just to code it and it'll all go well is naive. Having said that, if you do have a product that is mature, if you have a product where the architecture and technology stack are stable, the market or the target users and customers, the people who use the product are familiar with it, and you don't really have any intentions to change the target group, then it's much easier to anticipate what needs to be done and what needs to be done in a fair amount of detail and communicate that to development teams. But for digital products where usually there is a significant amount of change that you experience across the product life cycle, that phase is comparatively small. So I think what we should optimize for is really the uncertainty. What we really should optimize for is the change, the innovation. And certainly, yeah, when that's present, we need to do what you said. We need to search, we need to discover, we need to assume we don't know, and we need to try things out. We need to prototype, we need to validate.
I really like the word discovery, and I totally understand why Teresa Torres, for example, kind of, I think, sculpted the term continuous discovery. It comes from a long lineage of this continuous thinking. It started with continuous improvement a long time ago, of course, and then continuous integration, continuous delivery, and so on. It all makes sense. I think, however, that when we think about continuous discovery, we also implicitly think that there is one solution that we need to discover. And I'm thinking that in my own experience, it is more like there's many possible solutions, and we just need to find one that actually works, right?
Mm,
Like for any problem, we could
mm.
change our product in 100 different ways, and maybe 5 of those work, but we only need to discover one. So that's why I use the term search. But this also implies that there are different types of discovery, and you talk about that. Can you share how you separate those different types of discovery and what they mean in practice?
Yeah, sure. And I think when people, as you said, when people talk about discovery, different people have different ideas. Some people think about product discovery, which is really more solution focused. You could say it's about figuring out the right features and the right user experience that you should provide. And some people think when they hear the term product discovery more about, it's also referred to as market discovery. So which market segment should be addressed, who should be the users and customers, what value should be created for those individuals, which needs should be addressed, or which specific problem should be solved, what benefit should we offer, maybe also what are the business goals, the business benefits that we should create for our product, and maybe even how should we position the product. So those are questions for me that I would kind of relate to a product strategy. I'd address and capture articulate in a product strategy. So I think it's important to understand what we're dealing with, and sometimes you do need to carry out some a little bit of upfront market discovery, in the sense that you familiarize yourself with a market, particularly if you haven't addressed that market. So a story that I like to tell comes from a book that was published a while back, I think in the early 2000s, written by Jeffrey Liker, called The Toyota Way. I don't know, Vasco, if you've read it. And I think, Jeffrey Liker tells the story about Toyota sending a team of engineers, including the chief engineer, to California for 6 months to live the life and drive luxury cars and live in a really nice apartment and go to all these high society parties. And you're like, wow, why are they doing this? This is crazy. This is Toyota. They've invented lean management, lean. This is like, in the idea was to allow the team to immerse themselves in the experience of their target customers, and really carry out, what's also referred to as ethnographic research. And so, that's a form of, you could say, upfront market discovery. You really familiarize yourself with that target market. And the less you know about a market you want to address, the more of that upfront work tends to be required. Sometimes it's not necessary at all. Sometimes it's a few hours to a few days. In some cases, it can be a few weeks or even a few months. And then my preference is, before I then jump into product discovery, to do some strategizing and figure out, okay, based on that upfront knowledge that we've acquired, what is our product strategy now? How is our approach? What is our approach to make that product successful? And for me, the strategy is then the foundation to make meaningful decisions about features and the user experience. Because I feel if that strategy piece is missing, there's a massive gap between doing some market and upfront market and user research, and then trying to figure out what are the features of the product.
Now, I can hear all the agilists out there saying, wait a minute, are you just adding more planning to the process? But of course, that's not what you're doing. So I'll give you a chance of explaining what you mean when you talk about product strategy and why it's not more planning upfront.
Well, to a certain extent, it probably is a little bit of upfront work, but it's about minimizing that upfront work and right-sizing it. And I think there's a trade-off between just jumping to a solution, or into selecting a solution, and spending a little bit of time upfront thinking about ultimately what is our approach. What are the key decisions that we have to make in terms of who are the users and customers who should benefit from a product and who shouldn't benefit from it. And what is the specific need, or what are the specific needs that the product should address, and which ones are not going to be addressed by the product, and what are the business benefits that we really want to achieve, and again, what are maybe some business goals that we currently don't plan or cannot deliver. And for commercial revenue generating product, I do think it's important to think about positioning the product and some features that make it stand out from alternatives, from competing offerings. And for me, getting that right then allows me to move on and think about, okay, what are then specific outcomes or specific product goals that we could deliver over the next 6 to 12 months, and identify them. But if I don't have a strategy, if I don't have a meaningful or a strategy in place, then again, that becomes very, very hard. And there's an element of speculation that creeps into the planning process, you could say. And that's not something I'd be comfortable with, I have to say. So it's not about an excessive upfront amount of planning and spending a lot of time with big upfront strategizing and big upfront market research, but it's about doing just enough so that we can then select the right solution, select the right features.
Yeah, and of course, I'm not opposed to going to a nice southern beach and spend some time in a very expensive and comfortable hotel doing some strategizing. I'm all for it, especially if somebody else is paying. But that was a joke, by the way. That was a little bit of sarcasm. But it is important what you said, that the direction setting needs to start somewhere. Right? Because we don't start with a random set of features. In fact, most of our work is on improving an existing product, right? It doesn't take too long to get to a stage where you're just improving something rather than building something completely new. Can you explain how continuous discovery, specifically the activities that relate to that, help teams that are already in the delivery process? Because that's one of the topics that you brought in, right? Like Scrum implicitly has discovery inbuilt into how it works. So explain to us, what are the steps in a Scrum execution, Scrum implementation, that would be included from discovery, and also how that improves the way we deliver products with Scrum?
Yeah, so for me, as particularly with digital products, there is no point usually where a product is just done, right? Products continue to evolve, products continue to change. And if it's not about the features, the functionality, the user experience, then usually there's an element of technological change. I mean, it's been a fair amount of technological change we've experienced in recent years. To think about, I don't know, things like the Internet of Things, to blockchain, to machine learning, and of course, generative AI more recently. So I think that necessitates a continued attention to the product, both in terms of the features and user experience and the technologies. So, that then leads to the idea of an ongoing product discovery. So rather than saying like, oh, we'll talk about the features and we'll determine the features like, once a year, once every 6 months, and write them in our product backlog, hand them off to the engineering, to the development teams. They should just build them. We really do this on a continued basis. We figure out on a continued basis what to build and how to build it. And again, for me, that is built into the Scrum process with the idea of inspect and adapt. Build a product increment, inspect it, review it, look at it, um, through a product demo by releasing it maybe to selected users, listening to the feedback, looking at the data that comes back, and then using that to inform the product decisions. But I think in addition to that ongoing, you could say more tactical stream. So, in that sense, product discovery, or traditionally people will probably talk about requirements gathering and requirements engineering, um, seeing that as a more continued process. As a stream, as I said, I think in addition to that, it's also necessary to practice strategy on a more ongoing basis, because I see the same thing happening with strategy as it's historically what happens historically with requirements and product features. That strategy is done once a year, and then it's assumed to be kind of, yeah, you're finished with it. It looks good, sounds good, the strategy, very convincing. Yeah, nice words. Let's do it. But again, markets don't stand still. New competitors, enter the scene. Existing competitors offer new products or new features. There are new trends, there are new challenges, there are new opportunities. And I think it's very important to be able to leverage opportunities at an early stage and counter threats early on. And so what I like to suggest, in addition to establishing a continuous discovery process, is to practice continuous strategizing. And I write about it in my book, Strategize. And by the way, that's the reason why I've given the book the title Strategize, not Product Strategy, because product strategy is good, but as Eisenhower said, a plan is nothing, planning is everything. So we could say, strategy is good, but strategy is nothing, but strategizing is everything. Similarly, with the product backlog or features and discovery, to sort of have a set of features is really not that important or necessarily that helpful. It's really thinking about it and making sure that really what we're doing is truly meaningful. And so what I specifically like to suggest is that product people reserve a little bit of time, a few hours every week, to look at how their product is doing in terms of the product performance using the KPIs. How much value is the product creating? Are there any new trends? Are there any new is there anything happening in the competitive landscape? Any new competitors, or do existing competitors change their products? So that you can respond, as I said earlier, to those changes very quickly, and you can be proactive, and you avoid a situation where you find yourself with the back against the wall, trying to play catch up with a competitor, for instance. And do a little bit of that every single week, and then have bigger strategy review workshops where you inspect and adapt the strategy together with development team members and maybe some key stakeholders every 2 to 3 months. So again, that we stop thinking about doing work in stages and phases, which I think is still very ingrained, particularly in sort of the culture or the approaches of larger organizations. But we really think more about workflows, about streams that run in parallel and that need to be connected in a meaningful way.
I really like that last comment that you made. We need to step away from the idea that work is done in stages or phases. And when it comes to product development, we need to do all parts of the product development stack all the time. Like we've discovered that on the development side, meaning, coding and testing, we've discovered that, right? Like we went all the way from having all the requirements written up front to continuously updating the backlog, and then also continuously integrating and testing the code, and then ultimately continuously delivering to production. So we've gone through those stages, and I guess that a little bit of this topic of product discovery brings up the idea that actually we need to raise the awareness and build the tools and the strategies to bring this continuous product development all the way through the stack of the organization. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, very much so. So, you could kind of think of or a mental image that I find helpful is to think about continuous product strategizing as sort of a top level workflow. And then you can think about product discovery, and then you can think about product delivery, or you can just combine the discovery and delivery stream into a product development stream. Because ultimately, for me, product development is discovery and delivery. Um, but yeah, so and then the delivery piece, what we learn from building software and from releasing software, putting software in the hands of target users, that then informs the product discovery decisions about which features we should provide, and how they and how we should refine existing features, what again the user experience should like. But it also helps us evolve the strategy. So if we learn, for instance, that a product goal that we've chosen is unrealistic or is just wrong, or some of the key features are completely irrelevant, then that might have an impact not only on something like an outcome-based goal-oriented roadmap, but also our overarching product strategy. So that the strategic decisions that we take inform the more tactical ones inform discovery and ultimately delivery, and then the insights from the delivery inform the discovery, and insights from the discovery work help us evolve our strategic decisions. And that way we connect up those different work streams or flows that I think run in parallel. Again, moving away from first we do this discovery, first we do strategy, and then we do the product discovery, then we do the product delivery, and at some point in time we start again.
Which never happens in practice. Even way back when we actually believed it did, it never really did, because in the times of waterfall, people were still doing a lot of requirements engineering way into the product development. That's where the whole idea of scope creep comes from, as an example. And I really like this idea that you bring up, which is that these are parallel work streams that are constantly interacting with each other, and therefore our processes also need to adapt to that. And in the case of product owners, we need to also raise our skills to be able to do this, because we need to do strategizing, we need to do discovery, and we need to work with the teams on delivery as well, all at the same time, which I guess also emphasizes how important the product owner role is.
Yeah, and I think it's absolutely true what you say, and it's related also to skills is one element. The other element that I'd like to emphasize is empowerment. It's sometimes I see that product managers, product owners, are barely empowered to make product discovery decisions, but are told by stakeholders or their boss, here, I mentioned that earlier, here's a list of requirements or features, please build it. And then if we're being honest, the person is less of a product owner. I mean, the clue is in the name, owning the product on behalf of the company. There's no owning of the product. But you're more, if we're being honest, a delivery manager or project manager who takes that list of requirements and delivers the corresponding software. So the minimum of empowerment that we need to really require, in a way, a demand for product people is that they're empowered to make product discovery related decisions. But for me personally, that's not quite enough. So I think product owners, certainly Scrum product owners and product managers, really should be authorized not only to determine the features and the user experience of that product, but also to shape the product strategy, make the strategic product decisions, and then have what I like to refer to as full stack ownership. Really, own the strategy, own the discovery, and facilitate to a certain extent the delivery. Because that really allows people to maximize the value of their products, and that really allows people then to take appropriate accountability.
Absolutely. Own the whole stack of product development. So a little bit more on a personal note, Roman, when you've been talking and writing and consulting on this topic for a while, what has been perhaps the most surprising lesson you've learned about putting these ideas of product discovery in practice?
I always, not always. That's probably not the right way to put it. But I'm again and again surprised how delivery focused organizations are, and how delivery focused we tend to be, both in the agile space and in product management, and that product discovery and product strategy aren't are often not practiced effectively, and are more done sporadically. rather than in a disciplined manner and on a more regular, let alone continued basis. Um, so sometimes I think, I like what Teresa Torres did, the work Teresa did with her opportunity solution trees, but sometimes I think product managers just get stuck building those trees and then just handing off an elaborate story map to the development teams and move on. And, if that's the way how you play it, you've just kind of, it's just a different version of a waterfall-based sequential process. And there might be some improvements, but they're likely to be limited. So in a way, particularly in large organizations, I think, people still are influenced by traditional ways of working. And it's that lack of a solid, disciplined approach to product management and product development, and really establishing the right processes that I encounter again and again. But maybe that's sort of too much a negative. It's too a few that's slightly too negative. I don't know.
I've been, at least in my own experience, I've been encountering a lot of that. I guess you could call it sequential thinking in many different aspects, also outside product development, in company strategy definition, and in implementing the strategy that is defined by somebody else, but the person who defined the strategy is not talking to the teams at all, except maybe in the strategy kickoff meeting for about 35 minutes. So I have definitely encountered that. And I think it is a challenge for us who practice the product owner role, that we need to think more incrementally and iteratively, right? It's not about linearizing a process. It's about having those parallel workflows and making sure we're touching on all of those workflows when necessary. So I really like that call to attention that you've shared with us. So if you had a book, a podcast, a blog, whatever that may be, a resource for those that want to understand more about product discovery and how to put it into practice, what would that be, Roman?
Yeah, so I think, the main book to consider reading, mentioned earlier, is Teresa Torres' Continuous Discovery Habits. So I think it's an interesting book for those of you who have an agile background or work with agile frameworks. You may have to adapt some of the recommendations to a certain extent. There's lots of good stuff in there, lots of things I really like. Maybe the thing I'm somewhat uncomfortable with is building, what can be a pretty elaborate tree structure, discovering different opportunities and different solutions, and then validating it before we deliver anything. So my preference is really to start with what seems to be at a given point in time a most obvious solution, and then very quickly build part of that and do the inspect and adapt process as it's suggested by Scrum, and thereby deliver to discover rather than do a lot of upfront discovery before we start building something. So for me, again, that's a little bit too sequential. I can see that some organizations need that as an intermediate step to get to a more agile way of working, but I think we can be more ambitious and try and be more iterative. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially for those of us who call ourselves product owners. I mean, after all, it is a Scrum role. It was not something that existed before. We should definitely take advantage of the Agile mindset.
Mhm.
Thank you for sharing all of these lessons with our community, Roman. If people want to find out more about you and the work that you're doing, where should they go?
Yeah, please go to my website, romanpichler.com. So you'll find my blog there, my podcast, selected videos, my books, tools, templates, and frameworks to download and work with, try out. So yeah, check it out. Hope you'll find something that is useful.
Absolutely. So do check it out, romanpichler.com. And before we go, Roman, if there's one parting word of advice that you would like to leave for our audience, what would that be?
I think in product management, and no matter if you're a product owner, product manager, whatever the job title might be, you know, often we have to be a little bit patient and show a little bit of perseverance in order to affect some changes. And sometimes starting small is the right thing to do. Sometimes people say to me, "Oh, how can I kind of start working with a strategy? How can I start working with outcome-based product roadmaps?" And more often than not, the first step is just to sit down with the stakeholders and development team members and set a single outcome, a single product goal for the next 2 to 3 months, and start working towards it. And start focusing the product backlog on that specific product goal or product outcome in order to try that out, build some trust. So and then take it from there. So the answer is start small, but start somewhere.
Absolutely. So there is one question that just came from the audience. I would like to have the opportunity to ask you that. The question comes from Lauren David. What are some tips that help make the culture evolve and also accept that discovery really is a mandatory part of product development?
But I think to a certain extent, it's up to us product people, it's up to us product owners to say, this is part of our job. And, kind of, I don't want to say push back, but, you know, educate our managers and educate the stakeholders that if they see us primarily as a delivery function, that just is they just got the wrong end of the stick. It's the wrong outlook. So, sometimes I think as product people, we just kind of have to um, um, we just have to kind of grab the authority or the empowerment, and we'll just have to start being proactive and saying, look, I understand you like those features, and but let's talk about them together, and ultimately we need to make sure that those features really do create value and really work for the target audience and create value for the business as a whole. Because in the worst case, if we don't do that, then we end up with what some people call a Frankenstein product, a product that's just a collection of a loose collection of features and offers a horrible user experience and a really weak, terrible value proposition. So and then another element is really to build relationships, to be able to influence people, build trust. But yeah, as I said, I think sometimes as product owners, product people, we just need to be have a little bit more self-confidence and just say like, look, isn't it my job to help determine and discover the right features? Isn't that my job?
Yeah, another tip that I would add to those that you've just shared is also use data as much as possible. We may not be able to make decisions at the start, but we can certainly start influencing them immediately by bringing up data and questions like, instrumenting products that allow us to collect that data in the end and make informed decisions. I think that could be also a great leverage.
Absolutely.
Roman, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for your generosity of your
Uh,
time and your knowledge.
no, likewise, thank you for having me. It was lovely to be here again. I hope it was a little bit useful for everybody who was watching. And good luck with your products. Good luck with making the right product decisions and practicing product discovery.